Jasad sitting on the throne. And if that Jasad is Dajjal, the false Messiah, what is the implication of Dajjal being a Jasad? What is a Jasad? A lifeless body. A body without a soul. No, he has to be a human being because he impersonates the Messiah, who is a human being. So Dajjal is a human being, and yet he is a Jasad. The Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam said about Dajjal that he would be a Jew, a young man, powerfully built, with the curls at the side of the head, which the Jews have because the Torah has ordered it. So then, when we look at Dajjal, we see only a human being. What then is the implication of Dajjal being a Jasad? When Allah created the human being, Allah breathed of His spirit into the human being. So every human being has the divine spirit breathed into him. And as a consequence of having the divine spirit, we have independent thinking to be able to think things out, to reach to the reality of things, to penetrate the subject, to extend the frontiers of knowledge. You have something called a creative intellect. That is a human being. You could see intellectual integrity. And Allah also, when He breathed into human beings of His Spirit, gave to us freedom to choose, to go on this path or on that path. That is what Dajjal does not have. He has a ruh, but it's not a human ruh. And we cannot examine this from outside. He is externally programmed. All the knowledge that he has is externally programmed. Does not have the freedom to choose. So what is the implication for us? Our Prophet said that the greatest danger that mankind will experience, the greatest fitna, from the time of Adam alayhi salam to the last day, would be the fitna of Dajjal. What is the danger to us? That Dajjal wants to transform all of mankind into Jasads like himself. His first target are your children, to transform them into Jasads like himself. So that you will have children growing up who have lost the capacity to think. They're shallow. Their memory is damaged. Smartphone, yeah. It's very smart, because it locks you into, makes you addicted to the fast lane of life. And the fast lane of life destroys your capacity to think. It locks you into a world of noise, constant noise, 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 noise. And in order to think, you need silence, 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 silence. Yes. It locks you into the social world. You're constantly interacting with people all the time. But in order to think, you have to spend a little time with yourself. And when you spend a little time with yourself, the heart must be turned to Allah. And so Dajjal is transforming all of mankind into Jasads like himself, starting with the children. And the price that we pay was recognized by Malcolm X. Malcolm said there are two kinds of slaves. He said there are house slaves and there are field slaves. The house slave is externally a slave and internally a slave. That's a Jasad. The house slave does not recognize oppression, does not recognize the slave master as an oppressor, does not hate oppression, does not struggle within his heart for freedom and liberty from oppression. And when the slave master is ill, he says, "We sick." He identifies himself with the slave master. He's an appendage of the slave master. That's the Jasad. The Jasad wants something called moderate Islam, because that's the Islam that the slave master likes. But what does the Quran ask of you? The Quran says that we have sent this community, which follows Muhammad ﷺ, with this mission. Amr bil ma'roof wa nahy anil munkar. If it is right, if it is just, stand up for it, regardless of the price you have to pay. This is your mission. And if it is wrong, if it is unjust, if it is oppression, if it's a mountain of lies, stand up against it, regardless of your price that you have to pay. This is the mission of this ummah. But they say, no, don't do this. This is not moderate Islam. No. So the one who is externally a slave and internally a slave, that's the jasad. And Dajjal is before our eyes transforming the world into jasads. But Malcolm said there's another kind of slave. He may be externally a slave, but internally he's still a free man. And as a free man he can recognize who are those who take the body and chop it up into bits and then cover it with a mountain of lies. Because he's a free man, he can recognize the slave master and slavery as oppression, and he hates it and he despises oppression. And when the slave master's house is on fire, he prays to the sky, to the heavens above, send a strong wind, burn it down. That's not a jasad. That's not a jasad. If you are to protect yourself from Dajjal and ensure that you do not become a jasad like unto him, you've got to pay attention to internal freedom. Yes, we have chains all around us today. The IMF has done a good job. The Federal Reserve Bank has done an excellent job. And they put chains around all of us. But we can still preserve our internal freedom. And that is where we will protect ourselves from Dajjal.